The verse of the day and the last verse for the November challenge, even though it's December 1st, the December challenge starts tomorrow, is Romans 14:22-23. And it says, "You may believe there's nothing wrong with what you are doing, but keep it between yourself and God. Blessed are those who don't feel guilty for doing something they have decided is right. But if you have doubts about whether or not you should eat something, you are sinning if you go ahead and do it. For you are not following your convictions. If you do anything you believe is not right, you are sinning." To give a little context, Paul is talking to believers who might be stronger in the faith than others. So he's trying to explain that even though it's okay to eat anything, there is no longer rules when it comes to food and drink, because Jesus has now come, and being saved is not based off of what you eat or drink. It's based off of your heart now, your belief in him. Paul is saying that if someone's faith is weaker than yours and they believe that it's still not okay to eat or drink certain things, and that they would be going against their own conscience if they did, you should honor their conviction, and you shouldn't do something that would make someone else stumble. Back in the day, the law of Moses had a lot of rules and regulations when it came to what they ate and what they drank. So this is why certain people struggled with the transition between pre and post Jesus. I can imagine if I was living pre-Jesus and I had all these rules and then they got changed and I no longer had to live by them, it would probably take me a minute to adjust. Although the context of today's verses are very specific to the kind of life they lived back then, but it also applies to today, because the main message of today's verses are conviction. Following your conviction. It says if you do something that you don't believe is right, then you're sinning. And that's a pretty strong statement, right? How often do we do things even though we don't feel it's right, and then we're going against conviction? When we continue to go against conviction, we're actually just giving God evidence that we're not going to listen to the nudge of the Holy Spirit within us. Conviction is how we listen to the Holy Spirit. It's how we get corrected. It's how we follow what the Holy Spirit is doing, what the Holy Spirit wants us to say, or where he wants us to go. Being a man or a woman of conviction is one of the most important qualities you can ever strive to have, because that means you are listening to the Holy Spirit. It's one of the main qualities I'm looking for in my future husband, because if I know I'm going to be with a man of conviction, I know he's going to listen to God. I think a really good example is I no longer drink. My conviction is to be sober, but that's not everyone else's rule. Not everyone isn't able to drink. I know that I'm not, because it's a strong conviction of mine. And God has communicated and shown things to me that make it pretty clear. But other people don't have the past that I do. Other people don't have the struggles that I do when it comes to drinking and my mind being easily weakened, which I think is a universal thing at the same time. Because when you do drink, you are more weak in your mind, which makes your mind an easier target for the enemy to feed you lies. So although that's true for everyone, not everyone struggles with it the way I did, where God was like, okay, we need to shelf this and be sober so I can teach you and show you a lot of things. Another example of a conviction I had was to not get the shot. In 2020, I had a conviction, a strong conviction, that I wasn't supposed to get it. And that wasn't everyone's conviction. So God speaks to all of us differently based off of what he's teaching us. In 2020, I think God was teaching me to not always just go with the culture, to not always just do what everyone is doing, to not people please, to stand on my own. God was teaching me how to listen to his voice and no one else's. And in that decision, he was teaching me how to listen to that conviction that he gave me. Someone else in that season might be learning how to follow what is right for them, and that could have been getting the shot. So if you believe in Jesus and you have the Holy Spirit in you, the Holy Spirit is going to speak to you, convict you, and guide you into all of your decision making, into all of the things you're supposed to do, which is why it is so important to not go against it. Because if you continue to go against conviction, not only are you showing God that you're not trustworthy, but you're communicating to yourself that you don't know how to follow God. You don't know how to listen to him, which is going to break trust. And if you continue to break trust, you're going to feel less confident to follow what God is saying, to listen to God, to hear his voice. You're probably not going to feel very confident in what God's voice sounds like, because you aren't following conviction. There are so many examples of this, obviously, because going against conviction is just going against anything God is communicating to you in any given season. This can look like sleeping with your boyfriend or girlfriend and you having an uneasiness or an unrest, and it could be the Holy Spirit trying to convict you and trying to get you to turn from that. It could be you are struggling with judgment and you feel this tension between certain people and irritation with certain people. That can be the Holy Spirit convicting you of these feelings, showing you, highlighting these feelings that you need to go to God to work out. Any uneasiness, unrest, or wrestle that you feel, a lot of times God is trying to get our attention. Paying attention to the tension is how God speaks, because he's revealing, making it super clear, because usually tension is uncomfortable, right? So it makes us aware. When we're comfortable, we just keep going and doing the things that we're doing. When we're uncomfortable, it doesn't feel good. So we're like, okay, why does this not feel good? And that's how the Holy Spirit communicates to us a lot of times when it comes to redirection or going this way or correction or turning from our ways and following his ways. So it says, blessed are those who don't feel guilty for doing something they have decided is right. That verse does not mean you can do whatever you think is right. It is very clear in this book what is right and what isn't right. But when it comes to things that aren't communicated, when it comes to drinking, for example, and things that aren't very clear, we get to use discernment now and see, okay, does this decision align with God's heart? And if it does, then you're able to make a decision that's best for you. Does this decision make me stumble into sin? And if it doesn't, then you get to make that decision if it's best for you. In order to have conviction, you need fear of God, because conviction is really just the Holy Spirit giving you wisdom about something. How do you get wisdom? Fear of God is the beginning of wisdom. What's fear of God? Putting God first, developing a relationship with him. If you do that, you're going to grow in your ability to hear conviction and follow conviction and hear the Holy Spirit. And then you're going to have wisdom to make the right decisions when things come at you. I think all of us can always grow in conviction. Lord, help us to grow in our ability to do what is right when we feel it is right, and to not do the things that we know is wrong. And then we'll be able to follow his lead better. Okay?